Long before the thrones of men were forged, before the howl became a prayer, the moon goddess watched over a world trembling between hunger and devotion. Her chosen children, the first lichens, were born of her breath and her wrath. Through them she learned what it meant to love, and what it meant to be betrayed. Among her followers was a warrior who defied even her divine will, a man whose heart refused to bow. He was the first Alpha, the one who loved a mortal queen more than he loved the goddess who made him. And for that love he was cursed. The goddess tore the wolf from his soul and sealed it beneath the moon, swearing that no bond of mortal desire would ever again rival her dominion. From that day forth, every royal bloodline bore her mark, a promise and a threat. When shadow swallows light, and blood meets its mirror, the bond shall awaken anew. And love shall either crown or consume the world. Centuries passed. Kingdoms rose and fell beneath her gaze. The story of the cursed Alpha became a myth, a warning whispered in temples and royal nurseries: never love beyond the laws of the moon. But destiny is patient. Now, as the sky prepares once more for darkness to devour its light, the curse stirs. The air hums with a song older than prayer, a song that calls to those bound by blood and silence. In the silver heart of the Moonstone Palace, two souls wait, a king carved from restraint, a queen of quiet fire, unaware that the shadow already watches them. The night of the eclipse approaches, and the bond awakens. Chapter 1: The Cold Throne. The night bled silver. Moonlight spilled across the marble floors of the Moonstone Palace, cold and unyielding, like the crown that rested upon Queen Seraphine Valehart's head. She sat upon her throne, a sculpture of pale crystal and carved wolves, with the composure of a goddess carved from ice. The court below her moved like a sea of silk and whispers. Courtiers bowed, smiled, and lied through their teeth. The scent of incense and ambition filled the air. It was a night like every other. And yet, something in the air trembled, like the pause before a storm. "Your Majesty," murmured Chancellor Varen, bowing low, "the outer packs are restless again. The northern lords claim King Kael's patrols trespass upon their borders." Seraphine did not glance toward the empty throne beside hers. Her husband's seat, black stone, wolf-carved and waiting, stood untouched. "The king's patrols," she said softly, her voice calm and clear, "protect what the crown commands. If the northern lords take issue with that, they may bring it to council, not to war." A murmur ran through the court. Some admired her composure. Others mistook it for weakness. They were wrong on both counts. Seraphine had learned long ago that power was not in raising one's voice, it was in never needing to. From the shadows above the dais, a figure watched. King Kael Draven. He had arrived unseen, silent as breath, a predator cloaked in his own restraint. His presence pressed against the air itself, tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair shadowing eyes of storm gray. His scent, cold pine and steel, found her even through the hall's perfumed haze. Their gazes met. Just for a heartbeat. The throne room fell away. There it was again, that flicker, that dangerous heat she had long buried under duty and protocol. But Kael's expression was unreadable, carved in iron. Without a word, he descended the steps, his boots echoing through the chamber. "Continue," he said, his voice low and commanding. "We have not yet finished hearing the matters of state." The courtiers bowed deeper, fear rippling like wind over water. Seraphine inclined her head. "Of course, Your Majesty." It was their ritual, distance disguised as unity. The council lasted hours. By the time it ended, the moon hung heavy over the palace, full and pale, brushing the stained crystal windows with ghostly light. As the court dispersed, Seraphine rose, her silver gown whispering across the marble. She turned to leave, but Kael's voice stopped her. "Stay." A single word. Commanding. Unavoidable. She turned slowly. "Your Majesty?" Kael's gaze held hers, unreadable as ever. "There are whispers in the temple district," he said. "The high priestess speaks of omens. She's calling it the night of rebirth." Seraphine's pulse stuttered. "She means the eclipse. The priests say it will test every bond under the moon," he continued, stepping closer. "Including ours." She laughed softly, not out of humor but disbelief. "We have no bond to test." The words should have stung. They didn't, not outwardly. But Kael's jaw tightened, the faintest crack in his steel composure. Careful, Seraphine, he murmured. The moon listens. When he left her standing in the empty hall, she finally exhaled. The silence pressed against her ribs. She walked the corridor that led to her chambers, long, echoing, lined with statues of ancient alphas and lunas entwined in eternal stone embrace. Once she believed such things were beautiful. Now they looked like tombs. In her rooms the fire burned low. She removed her crown, letting it rest on the velvet beside her. The weight left an ache on her temples. Outside, the night wind howled against the stained glass, scattering patterns of light and shadow across her bare arms. She pressed a hand to her collarbone, to the place where the mating mark lay dormant, invisible but forever there. Once, when she had been young and foolish enough to hope, she had dreamed of it burning with passion. Now she was grateful it slept. Or so she told herself. Because as she stood there, alone in her silent chambers, a strange warmth pulsed beneath her palm. A flicker of light, faint, fleeting, like silver fire beneath the skin. Her breath caught. And somewhere far above the palace, the moon began to darken. Chapter 2, Whispers of Prophecy. The temple bells tolled before dawn. Their echo drifted through the mist-wrapped city of Valerian, seeping into dreams, summoning both sinner and saint to the marble steps of the Moonspire Temple. Queen Seraphine had not slept. She had watched the moon fade, watched it bleed pale light over the horizon until nothing remained but gray morning. The mark beneath her collarbone still throbbed faintly, like a secret heartbeat. Now, wrapped in a cloak of silver-gray wool, she walked through the inner courtyard, her guards trailing at a respectful distance. The air smelled of rain, stone, and incense. She'd come for answers, or perhaps for confirmation of her fears. The high priestess Lyra awaited her at the temple's heart. Old as the moonlight itself, or so the story said, the woman stood draped in white silk threaded with silver, her eyes clouded with the sight of things others were not meant to see. When Seraphine entered, the priestess turned her blind gaze toward her, and smiled faintly. "The queen who carries silence in her heart," Lyra murmured. "And the mark that does not sleep." Seraphine's hands tightened beneath her cloak. "You called for me." "I dreamed of fire," Lyra said simply. "Fire beneath the moon. Two wolves entwined in battle and in love. The night we have long feared comes again, the night of the eclipse." Seraphine's throat went dry. "You think it will awaken the bond?" "I know it will," Lyra whispered. "It will awaken everything you've tried to bury." The priestess's hand brushed Seraphine's arm, and the queen flinched as visions bled across her mind. The moon turning black. A crown falling. Blood dripping from lips that once swore loyalty. A heartbeat shared between two bodies. Seraphine stumbled back, breath ragged. Lyra's expression did not change. "The gods bound your souls for a reason, child. When the eclipse burns its shadow across the sky, you will face what you have denied, or it will destroy you both." Footsteps echoed in the hall behind her. A familiar voice, low and rough-edged. "Still weaving fear into faith, priestess?" Seraphine froze. Kael stepped into the light, clad not in royal regalia but a hunter's black coat, his sword slung across his back, his presence consuming the space. Lyra inclined her head, unbothered. "The moon shows truth, not fear." He moved closer, his gaze never leaving Seraphine. "Truth," he said quietly, "is the weapon that kills more kingdoms than swords." Seraphine turned from him, regaining her composure. "Why are you here?" Kael's smirk was faint, humorless. "To make sure the temple isn't filling your head with superstition." But the way his eyes lingered on her throat, on the place where the mark had begun to stir, betrayed something else. A flicker of recognition. Of fear. Of desire. Lyra watched them both with the patience of a seer who already knew how the story would end. "Your Majesty," she said softly, "whether you believe or not, you cannot stop what is written. When the shadow crosses the moon, your bond will ignite. You will either stand together, or burn together." The words hung between them like a sentence. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains. As they left the temple, Kael caught Seraphine's arm. Not roughly, but with the authority of a man who had forgotten how to ask. "Tell me the truth," he said. "You felt it too." She met his eyes. For a heartbeat, something in her wanted to lie, to keep the walls high, her composure intact. But the air between them was electric, the faint shimmer of the mark now pulsing against her skin like light trapped beneath glass. Yes, she whispered. I felt it. Kael's breath hitched, barely audible. Then we're running out of time, he said. They parted at the palace gates, but neither walked away unchanged. As Seraphine climbed the steps to her chambers, the world itself seemed to hum, as if something vast and ancient had awakened beneath the earth, stretching in the dark. And far above, beyond the clouds, the moon shuddered. Its light flickered just once before steadying again. The first omen had begun. Chapter 3, The Wolf and the Flame. The storm broke at dusk. Lightning split the sky over Moonstone Palace, silver veins crawling across clouds as if the heavens themselves were cracking open. From the eastern balcony, King Kael Draven watched the tempest roll over his kingdom, silent, still, carved from shadow and restraint. Rain hissed against the marble railings, washing the scent of iron from the air. He could feel it again. The thing inside him. The wolf. It prowled just beneath his skin, restless after years of forced silence. He could hear its heartbeat in his ears, could taste the metallic edge of hunger at the back of his tongue. The eclipse was coming. And the bond, the bond, was waking what the moon goddess had buried. Behind him, the chamber doors creaked open. Seraphine entered without ceremony, her gown a spill of moonlight over obsidian floors. Her presence shifted the air, cool, commanding, yet trembling with something she could no longer name. You missed counsel again, she said, her tone measured, but her pulse betrayed her. Lord Marin questions your absence. Kael did not turn. Let him question. He's waited years for my throne. He can wait one more night. You can't keep ignoring them. The nobles are restless. He glanced over his shoulder then, eyes dark as storm glass. So are the gods, Seraphine. She faltered, caught off guard by the rawness in his voice. I went to the temple this morning, she said softly. Lyra spoke of omens. Of fire beneath the moon. Kael's jaw clenched. She's always speaking of fire. She saw 2 wolves, Seraphine pressed. Bound and burning. That made him move. He turned fully, the motion fluid, dangerous. She told you that? Seraphine nodded. Do you know what it means? His silence was answer enough. The storm deepened. Thunder cracked. When lightning flared again, it illuminated the scars along Kael's throat and collarbone, faint, silvery, almost like claw marks. Those, she whispered. They're not from battle, are they? He met her gaze, the wolf stirring behind his eyes. They're the mark of defiance, he said finally. I defied the goddess once. To save my pack. She silenced the beast within me. Stripped me of what I am. And now. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate, as if crossing a threshold. Now she's waking him again. Through you. Seraphine's breath caught. The air between them pulsed with energy, the invisible tether of the mating mark flaring alive for the first time. She felt heat crawl across her skin, the same burn that had begun at the temple. Only stronger now. Wilder. As if the bond itself recognized him, as if it were remembering. Kael's voice dropped, low and rough. Do you feel it? She could barely speak. Yes. Then listen, he said, stepping so close that the storm's thunder was the only witness. That is not love. It's power. The kind that consumes. Lightning flashed again. For one trembling heartbeat, Seraphine saw his wolf reflected in his eyes, golden, furious, magnificent. And something inside her answered. Your curse? She whispered, her voice breaking. It's waking in me too, isn't it? Kael's hand twitched as if he might reach for her, then stopped. His restraint was agony made flesh. Yes, he breathed. And if it keeps spreading, I won't be able to stop myself. From claiming you. From breaking you. The words should have chilled her. Instead, a shiver of dangerous recognition ran down her spine. Seraphine took a single step closer. Not in defiance but in understanding. Maybe, she said, it's not meant to be stopped. The storm surged. The mating mark between them ignited, faint threads of silver light coiling across their skin, pulsing in sync with their heartbeats. Kael's breath came ragged, his wolf straining against its cage. He turned away, forcing space between them, his hands trembling. "Get out," he rasped, "before I lose what's left of my control." Seraphine lingered only a moment longer, long enough for the bond's pull to ache between them, before she fled the chamber, the echo of his voice following her into the storm. Later that night, she stood alone in her chambers, thunder echoing across the palace dome. The mark beneath her skin burned brighter than ever, alive, insistent, whispering of something ancient and inevitable. And in the dark beyond her window, Kael stood on the balcony once more, rain coursing down his face like tears he would never admit to. He looked toward the moon. For a heartbeat, it flickered crimson. The eclipse was coming. And with it, the night that would decide whether their love was salvation or ruin. Chapter 4, The Queen's Mirror. Dawn came like a ghost. The storm had passed, leaving the Moonstone Palace shrouded in mist. The marble corridors glimmered with dew, and somewhere deep within the halls, the toll of a distant bell marked the first light of the new day. Queen Seraphine Valehart sat before her mirror. The chamber was still, too still. Candles guttered in their silver holders, their flames bending toward her reflection as though drawn by a silent wind. The looking-glass was an heirloom, an artifact older than the palace itself, framed in carved moonstone and etched with runes that caught the faintest shimmer of light. It did not simply reflect. It watched. She traced her fingers over the faint silver-tinged mark on her collarbone, the one that had begun to burn the night before. It pulsed now, a quiet heartbeat beneath her skin. The bond is real. She had told herself for years that their union was politics, not destiny, that she could rule beside a man she did not love and still keep her soul untouched. But destiny, it seemed, had teeth. Her gaze lifted to the mirror again. For an instant, her reflection flickered. The air behind the glass rippled, and a voice, soft, melodic, ancient, whispered from beyond the veil. "You feel him now, don't you?" Seraphine stiffened. Her eyes darted toward the door, empty. The air was cold. Too cold. "Who's there?" The reflection smiled, her own face but not quite. The eyes were brighter, moon-pale, full of knowing. "I am what your blood remembers," the reflection said. "The first Luna. The one they called the Silver Flame." Seraphine's pulse quickened. "A vision," she whispered. "I'm dreaming." "No, child. The veil is thinning. The eclipse draws near, and through you the goddess begins to see again." Seraphine rose, her chair scraping across the floor. The mirror darkened like water clouded with ink. Images bloomed, a battlefield under a red moon, wolves howling in chains, a woman crowned in silver fire standing beside a man cloaked in shadow. And then, the same prophecy whispered by the priestess, "When shadow swallows light, the blood of mates shall feed the goddess." Seraphine stumbled back. "No. It is the law written in stars," the reflection murmured. "The bond you feel is not love. It is the tether of sacrifice." The mark on her skin burned hotter. "Then why me?" she cried. "Why now?" The reflection's smile softened. "Because your heart is strong enough to break it." A knock shattered the trance. "Your Majesty?" came Elias, her steward. "The court awaits." Seraphine blinked, and the reflection was gone. Only her own pale, shaken face stared back. She pressed a hand to her heart. The burn beneath her skin was fading, but the echo of that other voice, that impossible whisper, lingered. By the time she entered the hall of council, she was composed again. Regal. Controlled. But Kael was already there, seated upon the cold throne, eyes fixed upon her like a shadow studying light. Their gazes met, and in that instant the mirror's words returned. The tether of sacrifice. She lowered her eyes, masking the tremor in her pulse. The high priestess Lyra stood beside Kael, her robes glinting like molten silver. "The goddess has spoken through the winds," she said, her voice carrying through the chamber. "The eclipse approaches. The ritual of reflection must be performed." Seraphine's breath hitched. Not yet. Not when the mark was still burning. Not when she could still hear that voice whispering from the mirror's depths. But Lyra's eyes gleamed, and Seraphine knew, the game had already begun. That night she returned once more to her chamber, drawn against reason to the mirror. The candles were unlit, yet the glass shimmered with its own faint light. This time the reflection did not speak. But as Seraphine touched the cold surface, the silver beneath her skin flared, and for a single heartbeat she saw not her face but Kael's. He stood alone in his darkened hall, eyes closed, head bowed as if he too were haunted. Two reflections. Two souls bound across shadow and flame. When the light faded, Seraphine whispered to her empty room, "Whatever this bond is, I will master it before it masters me." But even as she said it, the mirror shimmered once more, and in its depths the faint outline of the moon turned blood red. The eclipse was nearly upon them. Chapter 5. The First Omen. The day broke wrong. Even before the dawn bell sounded, the air over the Moonstone Palace was heavy, thick with the taste of iron and storm. The wolves in the outer courtyard howled in restless dissonance, a low, shuddering sound that made even the guards glance uneasily at the darkening sky. Something unseen pressed upon the world. Queen Seraphine Valehart felt it before she saw it, a hum beneath her skin, a current pulling through the bond that linked her to Kael. The mark on her collarbone pulsed faintly, echoing the rhythm of her heartbeat. She stood on her balcony overlooking the crescent vale, the valley bathed in mist, silver towers piercing clouds like ancient spears. But the sun, when it rose, seemed duller, its light fractured as though filtered through glass. And high above, where the moon should have slept, it lingered, pale and visible even in daylight. Watching. Waiting. A knock. The sound of hesitation. "Enter," she said softly. The door opened, revealing Lady Myra, her attendant, young, sharp-eyed, loyal. "Your Majesty, the priestess summons you to the temple court." "The sky," she stopped, glancing upward through the window. "It isn't natural." "No," Seraphine murmured. "It isn't." She turned, sweeping the heavy silver mantle around her shoulders. The queen who entered the hall was composed, but her pulse thrummed with unease. Every torch flickered as she passed, and the air shimmered faintly, the scent of moonfire threading through the corridors. The temple court lay open to the sky, a vast circle of marble and silver arches, its center dominated by the statue of the moon goddess herself. Priests and nobles gathered below, their voices hushed, eyes turned upward to the strange light. At the far end stood Kael Draven. He was speaking in low tones to the high priestess Lyra, his expression carved from stone. But as Seraphine approached, he turned. Their eyes met, and she felt the bond snap taut between them, an invisible thread pulling too tight. The moment stretched, wordless, charged. Then Lyra's voice shattered the silence. "Behold the sign of the coming eclipse," she cried, raising her hands. "The moon walks the day, the goddess's eye unblinking. The rite of reflection must begin." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Kael's jaw clenched. "It is too soon," he said coldly. "The stars have not yet aligned." Lyra's gaze glittered. "The goddess decides the hour, not her king." Seraphine's pulse spiked. Every instinct told her to stay silent, but the mark on her skin flared again, burning through her restraint. "The bond is stirring," she said quietly, yet her voice carried through the courtyard. "The realm feels it. If we rush this ritual, we risk unleashing what none of us understand." Lyra smiled thinly. "Ah, but that is precisely what the goddess desires, revelation." A faint tremor ran through the ground. Torches guttered. Above them, the clouds twisted in slow, deliberate spirals, and a low hum echoed from the stones themselves. Gasps rippled through the gathering. Some fell to their knees. Others fled. The statue of the goddess began to weep. Silver tears, gleaming as they fell from marble eyes, pooled at her feet, and the scent of ozone thickened the air. "Kael," Seraphine whispered, moving toward him. "Do you feel it?" His hand found hers, instinctively, not by thought. His skin was hot, his pulse thrumming with restrained violence. "I feel everything," he said hoarsely. Their bond pulsed, a heartbeat shared. The mark burned like a brand. For one brief instant, Seraphine's vision blurred, and she saw The courtyard dissolved into silver mist, and in its place she glimpsed two wolves standing beneath a blood-red moon, one black as night, the other white as flame, circling, snarling, yearning. Their voices were one, their fury divine. Then the vision shattered. When she opened her eyes, the courtyard was chaos. The priests were crying prayers, nobles were scattering. The weeping statue had cracked from crown to heart. From the fracture, moonlight bled like liquid fire. "The first omen," Lyra whispered, awe and dread mingling in her tone. "The eclipse begins to wake." Kael's voice was quiet but lethal. "Seal the temple. No one enters until I command it." Guards obeyed instantly. Lyra bowed her head, too quickly, before turning away, her robes whispering across the marble. Seraphine exhaled slowly, forcing her trembling hands to still. But when she turned to Kael, she found him already watching her. "Whatever this is," he said softly, "it begins with us." And she realized, beneath the storm, beneath the prophecy and fear, that his words were not accusation. They were truth. That night, as thunder whispered along the mountains, Seraphine stood once more before her mirror. The faint silver mark at her throat pulsed in rhythm with her heart. Outside, the moon glowed bright against the clouds, haloed by an eerie crimson ring, the first shadow of the coming eclipse. She reached toward the glass, and the reflection that met her touch was no longer her own. For the first time it was Kael's. He was in his chamber, hand pressed to the same spot on his neck, eyes distant, and when his gaze flicked up as though he could see her, she felt the world tilt. Two rulers, bound by fate, staring at each other through mirrored glass and moonlight. The first omen had come. And the night would never be the same again. Chapter 6. The Ritual of Reflection. The temple was never meant to hold this kind of silence. It was the hush before something vast breathed, before storm or birth or death. Every candle along the marble floor flickered, the flame shivering as though afraid to burn. Shadows bled upward across the silver-carved pillars, twisting like living things. Queen Seraphine Valehart stood at the center of the circle, her gown of pale silk reflecting the fractured light from above. The air was heavy with incense, moon blossom and crushed myrrh, cloying, sacred and faintly suffocating. Around her, 12 priests knelt in formation, murmuring ancient words that turned to frost on their tongues. At the far end of the temple, the high priestess Lyra raised the mirror of the goddess, a vast obsidian disk framed in silver, its surface alive with whispers of light and shadow. Kael Draven stood opposite Seraphine, his eyes unreadable. He wore ceremonial black, not the robes of a king but the armor of a supplicant. The light caught the scar across his cheek and painted it silver. Their gazes met, the bond between them alive, pulsing with unseen fire. Lyra's voice broke the silence. Two souls bound by divine will, the wolf and the flame. By reflection, by shadow, by blood and breath, the goddess commands awakening. The priest's chant deepened, a sound like stone grinding against stone. Seraphine's heart pounded in her chest. The mark at her throat burned again, the same rhythm as Kael's pulse. She could feel him, not just see him, his breath, his restrained power, his fear. She whispered almost without realizing, "Kael, what if it's not the goddess binding us?" He didn't look away. "Then it's something older." Lyra's hand dropped, and the ritual began. The mirror trembled. Its surface rippled like water, then turned black, absolute, lightless. A wind tore through the temple, extinguishing half the candles in a single breath. The priests gasped as frost spread from the base of the mirror, crawling across the marble. "Step forward," Lyra commanded. Kael moved first, his boots echoing against the cold floor. Then Seraphine followed, her hand brushing his as they crossed the circle. Their reflections appeared in the mirror, but not as they were. In the glass, Kael's eyes glowed gold, his form shadowed by something vast and lupine, a wolf of starlight and ash. Seraphine's reflection burned white, her hair alight with flame, wings unfurling from her back like feathers of molten silver. A murmur rippled through the priests, awe and terror mingled. Lyra's voice quivered. "The prophecy is true, the wolf and the flame walk again." The mirror pulsed once, twice, then split the air with a sound like shattering crystal. Pain lanced through Seraphine's chest. Light burst from her mark, spiraling toward Kael, and his mark answered. Between them, the air rippled, weaving their energies together until they stood bound by a column of light and shadow entwined. Visions surged, fragments of ancient memory, voices not their own. When the moon bleeds, the world will remember. The bond is not love, it is the key. One must burn. One must bleed. Seraphine gasped and dropped to her knees. Kael caught her, his grip fierce, grounding. His breath was ragged, his veins lit with gold. Seraphine, he hissed. End it, before it takes us both. I can't, she choked. It's not the goddess anymore. The mirror exploded. A storm of silver shards and crimson light flooded the temple. Every torch flared. The priest screamed. Lyra fell to the ground, clutching her chest. And then silence. When the light faded, the mirror was gone. In its place stood a door of light, veined with shadow, humming like a heartbeat. Kael rose slowly, helping Seraphine to her feet. Both bore glowing sigils now, his across his throat, hers along her wrist, the same pattern, the same pulse. They stared at the door. Neither dared step closer. Lyra crawled toward them, her face pale as moonstone. The path to the ecliptic realm, she whispered, trembling. The place where the goddess sleeps. You have opened it. Kael's expression hardened. And what lies beyond? Lyra's eyes flicked toward Seraphine. Truth. Pause. And ruin. Outside, thunder broke the heavens. The eclipse began to shift, its ring deepening into blood-red shadow. The bond between Kael and Seraphine pulsed in response, alive, dangerous, yearning. Whatever we've awakened, Kael murmured, voice low, it won't go back to sleep. Seraphine's gaze lingered on the door, where light met shadow, where reflection became reality. Then we find out what it wants, she said softly. Together. Chapter 7, The Door Between Worlds. The palace slept under a bleeding moon. From the highest tower, the eclipse cast a red halo over Moonstone Keep, turning the marble halls into veins of shadow and light. Bells tolled from the city below, soft, uncertain, as if the mortals could sense what the heavens now concealed. But within the temple of reflection, time itself had stopped. The door of light still shimmered where the mirror had once stood, its edges rippling like the surface of a living lake. Kael stood before it, his breath slow and heavy, the mark at his throat pulsing with the rhythm of Seraphine's heartbeat. Behind him, Seraphine touched her wrist where the sigil still glowed faintly gold. Each throb of that light sent a wave of warmth through her veins, matched by the answering pulse from him. Every law says we should seal it, Kael said, his voice a low growl. Let it fade. Let the gods keep their secrets. Seraphine stepped beside him, her face caught between defiance and awe. And when has obeying the gods ever saved us? The door breathed. A soft, resonant hum, neither invitation nor warning but recognition. Seraphine lifted her chin. The bond woke it. It's calling to us. Kael's jaw tightened, but his gaze softened when he met hers. If we step through, there's no return, she finished. The air between them was molten with unspoken things. She reached for his hand. For a moment, he hesitated. Then his fingers closed around hers, rough and warm, as if anchoring himself against the inevitable. Together, he said. The door shivered open. Light swallowed them whole. Sound vanished. Gravity dissolved. For a heartbeat, they were nothing but breath and memory, two souls spiraling through color and heat, falling through the skin of reality itself. When the world reformed, they stood in a place that was not a place. A vast plain stretched around them, bathed in lunar silver, its surface rippling like liquid glass. Above, the sky was both night and dawn, stars bleeding into ribbons of gold. There was no wind, only the echo of heartbeats, one rhythm shared. Seraphine exhaled. Her voice came out as a whisper. The ecliptic realm. Kael's eyes swept the horizon. A dream of the goddess or her grave. She turned in a slow circle, taking in the strange beauty of it. Shadows moved across the mirrored ground, but they cast no reflection. They were reflection, echoes of other selves. Her gaze caught one and froze. It was her, but not as she was. In the reflection walked a woman crowned in fire, her eyes ancient and sorrowful. Beside her moved a great wolf of silver light. Their hands brushed and the sky itself trembled. Seraphine's breath hitched. "Kael, look." He followed her gaze, and for a moment both were silent, confronted by the impossible truth of what they saw. "They were us," he said at last, voice barely audible. "Or what we were meant to be," she whispered. A sudden tremor ran through the mirrored plane. Cracks of dark energy spidered across the surface, radiating outward from beneath their feet. The reflections began to distort, their past selves twisting into shapes of pain and fire. From the distance came a voice, soft, melodic, terrible. "Children of my defiance." The words rolled like thunder underwater. "You open what was sealed. You seek what must remain forgotten." Seraphine felt the sound in her bones. The goddess? Kael's eyes flared gold. "No. Something older still." The voice laughed, not cruel but knowing. "The bond you bear is not mine. It was forged in rebellion, in love unpermitted. You were the curse of those who tried to remake the moon's fire into mortal warmth." Seraphine stepped forward, her anger rising with her fear. "Then tell me why it burns us. Tell me what it wants." The world stilled. The stars dimmed. "It wants to be complete." Suddenly light surged upward, engulfing Kael. He staggered back as the spectral wolf within him tore free, a creature of moonlight and shadow howling into the void. "Kael?" He clutched his chest, his breath fractured, eyes half golden. "It's calling to the beast." The wolf's light merged with his body again, and when his gaze found hers, something wild burned there. For one breathless instant, Seraphine felt everything: his desire, his fear, his aching restraint. The bond between them flared, a living thread of energy connecting skin to soul. The realm itself seemed to respond. The mirrored plane rippled, showing flashes of memory, the moment they first met, the night he crowned her queen, the touch they both pretended not to crave. She whispered, shaken, "It's showing us truth." Kael's voice was rough. "No. It's showing us what comes next." From the horizon, the door of light began to fade. The way back was closing. Seraphine turned to him, urgency tightening her chest. "If we leave now, we lose whatever this realm was meant to show us." Kael stepped closer, his presence radiating heat and danger. "And if we stay?" Her pulse raced. "Then we finally stop running from what we are." Their foreheads met, a single breath shared between fire and shadow. As the eclipse reached its midpoint above the mirrored world, the realm shuddered once more, reshaping itself into something new, a towering spire of glass and bone rising in the distance, crowned with a faint silver flame. Seraphine opened her eyes, their reflection dancing in the mirrored ground. "That's where the truth waits," she said. Kael nodded once, his expression unreadable. "Then we go to meet it." Chapter 8: The Awakening. The palace did not sleep that night. Whispers slithered through the marble halls like smoke, curling around the edges of closed doors and gilded mirrors. Servants claimed they saw silver light bleeding through the walls of the ritual chamber, a pulse that throbbed like a heartbeat. The moon had vanished behind the veil of shadow, yet the palace glowed with its ghost. Seraphine stood before her chamber window, hands trembling against the cold glass. The burn of the mark at her throat had not faded. It pulsed in time with her heartbeat, a brand of heat and frost. She could feel him, Kael, even through stone and silence. Every breath he took echoed in her chest. Every beat of his heart tugged at the bond now alive between them. She had tried to suppress it, to command her own body to obey reason. But reason had no dominion over what the moon had claimed. The air shimmered, and he was there. Kael entered without sound, his presence filling the chamber like a storm front. Shadows clung to him, the faint trace of moonlight on his dark hair, eyes burning with something ancient. For a long moment neither spoke. The bond thrummed between them, an invisible current alive and merciless. "You should have stayed in your chambers," Seraphine said quietly, her voice steadier than her pulse. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "And you should have told me what you felt." "I felt," she faltered, every word trembling beneath the weight of truth. Nothing that I can name. Kael's gaze darkened. Lies have no place between us now. He reached out, not to touch but to hover his hand inches from her skin. The air rippled. She felt the warmth of his palm without contact, the bond sparking, electric. For a heartbeat she thought the world might shatter under the pull. Then Kael tore his hand away, jaw clenched, wolf's eyes flashing gold. The bond is too strong. It shouldn't have awakened like this. Then unbind it, Seraphine snapped. You're the king, command it to stop. He gave a humorless laugh, low and dangerous. If only the gods were so obedient. Silence stretched, thick and trembling. Outside, the wind howled against the palace walls. Finally Kael spoke, quieter now, almost human. This bond will change everything. The court will sense it. The priestess will come for us. Seraphine turned from him, gripping the window ledge. Let her. I am done living in fear of her prophecies. He studied her, this woman who had once been all poise and restraint, now burning with defiance. Something within him softened, then flared. You don't understand, he said. The last eclipse cost me everything. My wolf. My soul. If this power grows unchecked. Then we will face it together, she interrupted, meeting his gaze. You are not the only one bound by the moon's will. The word struck him like a vow. The bond between them pulsed once, a deep, resonant thud of shared heartbeat, and the chamber lights flickered, dimming into a soft, silver glow. For an instant she saw his true form behind the man, the shadow of a great wolf cloaked in lunar fire. And in the reflection of the window she saw herself not as a queen in silk, but as his equal, marked by the same divine flame. He exhaled, voice breaking the spell. So it begins. Yes, Seraphine whispered, her eyes lifting to the dark horizon where the first sliver of the eclipsed moon began to bleed light again. The Awakening. Chapter 9, Visions in Silver. The world had not returned to normal with dawn. The eclipse had passed, but its shadow lingered in every breath Seraphine took. The bond, newborn and restless, thrummed beneath her skin like a second pulse, whispering Kael's heartbeat into her dreams. She could sense him even when they were apart. His thoughts circling war councils, his body restless, his mind, afraid. But fear was not foreign to her. What was foreign was the warmth she felt each time his presence brushed against her mind, like sunlight trying to bleed through frost. She sat in the Luna's sanctum, a secluded chamber lined with mirrors of silver glass. Once it had been her place of prayer. Now it felt like a cage of reflections. Each mirror shimmered faintly, responding to her heartbeat, and when she tried to quiet her mind, the glass began to ripple. She saw flashes, too swift, too vivid to be imagination. A silver wolf standing before a woman cloaked in moonlight. A hand raised in defiance. A voice, hers and not hers, crying, "You defied me, Kael Draven. The bloodline shall carry my mark until love conquers pride." Seraphine's breath caught. The vision faded, but the air still hummed with divine resonance. Her mark burned faintly at her throat, as though it had recognized the name. The door opened softly behind her. Kael entered without armor this time, dressed in dark linen, unarmed, unguarded. He looked human again and yet, not. His eyes caught the light strangely now, silver glints hidden behind the blue. "You felt it too," she said, not turning. "The vision." He didn't answer immediately. He came to stand beside her reflection, his face half-lit, half-shadowed. "I felt the goddess watching," he admitted. "But visions are your gift, not mine." "I saw you," Seraphine murmured. "You stood before her, and she cursed you. For defiance." He exhaled slowly, gaze flickering away. "Then the bond has chosen to show you what I could not." "Why?" "Because it wants you to understand what it has tied you to." Their eyes met in the mirror. No crown, no throne, no court, just two souls tethered by something neither fully understood. "The curse wasn't meant to destroy me," Kael said quietly. "It was meant to bind my bloodline to hers. The moon goddess created the bond as punishment. Love turned into a chain." Seraphine felt her heart tremble. "And yet it feels alive. As if it's something more than punishment. Because you breathe life into it, Kael replied, voice low. You always did. Her pulse quickened. For the first time she didn't look away. The air between them thickened, shimmering faintly, the bond responding to emotion like an echo of magic. Then, without warning, every mirror in the chamber flared to life. The reflections twisted, showing not their faces but two wolves, one silver, one shadow, circling each other beneath a bleeding moon. The goddess's voice lilted through the air, faint but unmistakable. When one heart yields, the curse shall end. But if both stand proud, the blood shall run forever. The light died and silence crushed the room. Seraphine stepped back, breath unsteady. Kael's expression was unreadable. She's not done with us, he said finally. This was only the beginning. Seraphine turned toward him, her eyes glinting like silver flame. Then let her watch, she said. If love is our curse, we will make it our weapon. Outside, the palace bells began to toll, 3 sharp chimes signaling the council's summoning. Somewhere in the halls below, the high priestess smiled in the dark, for she had seen the same vision through her scrying glass, and she knew the blood of mates would soon be tested by fire. Chapter 10, The Court of Shadows. The Moonstone Palace was a cathedral of whispers. By midday the corridors buzzed with rumor. The ritual of reflection, the awakened bond, the unnatural light that had bled from the ritual hall, all of it had become fodder for the nobles' tongues. Some called it divine favor. Others called it witchcraft. And in the throne room, where moonlight fell through arched windows like blades of glass, the queen and king sat side by side for the first time in months. Seraphine wore silver armor beneath her gown, hidden but felt, its cool weight a comfort. Kael sat rigid beside her, every inch the warrior king, though his eyes flickered often toward her, an instinct he didn't yet trust. The High Council had gathered in a crescent before them. Alphas from distant packs, ministers, generals, and at their center, the High Priestess herself. She was veiled in white, but the shape of her smile gleamed like a knife through silk. Your Majesty, she said, voice smooth as moon wine. The council offers its reverence and seeks clarity. The court trembles with talk of miracles. Kael's voice was calm, but there was iron beneath it. Miracles are the domain of the goddess, not the gossip of men. Indeed, the priestess replied sweetly. And yet the goddess's domain has been disturbed. The eclipse burned longer than foretold. The bond between King and Luna flared in ways unnatural. There are fears. Fears, Seraphine interrupted, are born of ignorance. Every head turned. The queen's voice carried, cool and crystalline. The goddess tests her chosen. Our bond is proof that her will still moves through the blood of kings and queens. Would you doubt the moon itself, priestess? The silence that followed was sharp. A muscle tightened in the priestess's jaw. Of course not, my queen. But the scriptures warn that when mortal passion rivals divine purpose, balance must be restored. And I fear, her eyes flicked briefly toward Kael, that love may have awakened something dangerous. The court murmured, a rustle of uncertainty. Kael's hand twitched against the throne arm, but Seraphine's fingers brushed his, subtle as breath. A silent warning. Let me handle this. Seraphine rose, her gown catching the light like liquid silver. The goddess does not fear love, she said. Only those who twist it to control others. The priestess's eyes flashed, but her voice remained honeyed. Then you understand my burden, my queen? To protect the realm from imbalance. The goddess demands purity before the next eclipse. Your bond must be tested by the sacred rite of separation. Kael's voice thundered through the chamber. No one touches my bond. Not even the goddess, the priestess whispered. The council erupted in shocked whispers. Seraphine stepped forward, cutting through the noise with a raised hand. We will consider your counsel, High Priestess. Until then, the throne remains united. She turned and descended the dais before Kael could speak again, her silken train a river of silver shadow. The meeting dissolved in a flurry of whispers. Outside the throne room, Kael caught up with her in the hall, his voice low and rough. You shouldn't have faced her like that. I had to, she said, not slowing. She's baiting you, hoping your wolf will break and prove her prophecy right. He stopped her with a hand on her arm. The contact sent a flare of heat through the bond, but his grip softened almost immediately. "You're playing a dangerous game, Seraphine." "So are you," she murmured. "The difference is, I know the rules." She stepped away and vanished into the corridor's silver light. Behind her, Kael watched, jaw tight, the wolf beneath his skin pacing in unease. In the distance, the toll of the temple bells echoed like a warning. Balance would demand blood, and the priestess had already begun to decide whose. Chapter 11, Beneath the Moonfire Veil. Night returned to the Moonstone Palace in hush and smoke. From her balcony, Queen Seraphine watched the moon rise like a blade through the clouds, sharp, white, unflinching. The echoes of the day's council still rang in her mind. The priestess's insinuations, the noble's shifting loyalties, Kael's growl barely contained beneath his calm. The realm was trembling, not yet in war but in waiting. A knock broke her reverie. "Enter," she said. A cloaked attendant stepped in, head bowed. "Your Majesty, the maid you sent to clean the ritual chamber, she's missing." Seraphine turned sharply. "Missing?" "Yes, my queen. Her shift ended hours ago, but she never returned to her quarters." The guards searched the east wing, only her lantern was found, still burning. Seraphine's pulse quickened. That chamber, the site of the ritual of reflection, had been sealed by her command. If someone had gone missing there, it meant one of two things: trespass or erasure. "Fetch Captain Iriel," Seraphine ordered. And no word of this to the council. Moments later, Iriel, her most loyal shadow guard, entered, a tall woman with eyes like onyx and a scent of rain-soaked steel. "The chamber?" Seraphine asked. "Already secured. But you should see this." They moved swiftly through the corridors, their footsteps soft on moonlit stone. The palace, so grand by day, became something older at night, its walls whispering, its shadows holding secrets of the first kings. When they reached the sealed ritual hall, Iriel pressed a sigil against the door. It opened with a hiss of silver dust. Inside, the mirrors still stood in a circle, the same ones that had reflected the bond's awakening during the ritual. But now something was wrong. The air shimmered faintly as if the light itself was breathing. "Moonfire," Iriel whispered. Seraphine stepped closer. The mirrors were no longer inert, they rippled faintly like water. And within them, faces. Fleeting, distorted, like memories caught between worlds. Then one reflection moved when she did not. A woman stood inside the mirror, a mirror version of Seraphine, but her eyes glowed white, and her lips whispered something soundless. Seraphine's pulse pounded. "What do you see, my queen?" Iriel asked. Seraphine swallowed. "The veil. It's thinning again. The boundary Kael and I tore open during the ritual, it's spreading through the palace." "Should I alert the king?" Seraphine hesitated. "Kael will feel it soon enough." The bond thrummed in her chest, faintly answering. But something deeper stirred beneath the moonfire's light. She turned to the mirror again, and this time she saw more than her reflection. A shadow stood behind her mirror double, tall and crowned in antlers of bone. Its voice slithered through her mind like a hiss. "You bear the moon's flame, but do you know whose fire it truly is?" Seraphine staggered back, breath catching. The mirrors flickered, light to dark, moonfire to void, and then the reflection shattered, the sound echoing like a scream through the chamber. Iriel drew her blade, eyes sharp. "My queen." Seraphine straightened slowly. "The veil isn't just reacting. It's calling. Something, or someone, is trying to cross." They stood in the trembling silence that followed, surrounded by the scent of scorched silver. Finally, Seraphine said quietly, "Seal this chamber again. No one enters until I say so, not even the king." "As you command." As Seraphine turned to leave, she caught one last flicker in the mirror shards, her reflection smiling long after she had stopped. And somewhere deep in the palace, the moonfire flared once, then vanished, leaving a faint echo in Kael's dreams. Her fire is no longer hers alone. Chapter 12, The Mark of the Eclipse. Kael woke with the taste of metal in his mouth. The scent of smoke lingered in the air, though no fire burned within the royal chambers. His skin felt fevered, the bond mark on his chest pulsing faintly beneath the skin like a second heartbeat. He sat upright, hand pressing over it, and the pulse answered him. Not his own rhythm. Hers. Seraphine. He could feel her emotions, faint and blurred. Fear, defiance, and something darker. An echo of a voice not her own. Damn it, he hissed, throwing back the sheets. Outside, the eclipse moon still bled silver through the open window, painting everything in pale luminescence. The court physician said the moon's pull would fade with dawn. They were wrong. Each night, its power grew stronger, its whispers clearer. Kael rose and dressed swiftly, the leather of his tunic creaking under tense muscles. The mark beneath his collarbone shimmered faintly, threads of light branching outward like cracks in ice. When he caught sight of it in the mirror, the lines moved, alive, watching. Then a voice, soft, mocking, feminine, echoed in his mind. The flame has awakened, King of Wolves. Will you burn or will you kneel? He struck the mirror with his gauntlet. It splintered, fragments scattering across the floor. The door burst open. Your Majesty. Kael turned sharply. It was General Orin, his oldest friend and commander of the Blood Guard. His face was pale beneath the torchlight. The High Priestess requests your presence. At once. Kael narrowed his eyes. Why? She says the eclipse mark has appeared again on the palace walls. The same sigil that cursed your line centuries ago. Kael's jaw tightened. The mark of the eclipse. Orin nodded grimly. It's spreading through the east wing. Some of the younger guards are saying it's a sign that the Moonfire goddess has chosen a new vessel. Kael's blood turned cold. And who do they think she's chosen? Orin hesitated. The Queen. The temple of Lunara shimmered with ghost light. Braziers burned with pale blue fire, casting long shadows that bent and moved like living things. The High Priestess stood before the ancient altar, her veil silver-threaded and her hands gloved to the wrist. Kael strode in, flanked by guards. You sent for me. She inclined her head, her voice lilting, smooth as oil. Your Majesty. I feared you would ignore my summons. The signs grow stronger each hour. I don't answer to omens, Kael said coldly. Speak plainly. The priestess's smile did not waver. Then plainly, my king, the eclipse mark has returned because your bond with the Queen is awakening powers neither of you understand. The Moonfire is not a blessing, it is a curse. It seeks balance, and it always demands blood. Kael's eyes flashed gold, a warning. Choose your words carefully. Oh, I have, she murmured. You feel it, don't you? The pull beneath your skin? The hunger that is not entirely your own. Kael's breath caught, unbidden. The mark on his chest seared suddenly, a flare of pain and heat. The priestess stepped closer, her voice low. You are both becoming conduits. But the Moonfire does not share its power, it consumes. When the veil finally tears, one of you will survive. The other will be devoured. Kael's hands clenched into fists. You think you can sow fear between us? I do not need to sow what already grows, she whispered. You will see soon enough. The Moonfire veil chooses its heir. The question, my king, is whether it will be you, or your Luna. As she turned away, Kael's vision flickered. His reflection in the temple's silver basin wavered, replaced by something monstrous. His eyes burned red, his body shrouded in shadowed flame. And behind him stood Seraphine, eyes white, expression unreadable, her hands raised as though casting him into the fire. He staggered back, the vision vanishing, leaving only the cold gleam of moonlight on water. The priestess's voice floated through the temple. The mark is not merely upon you, Kael. It is within you. The eclipse has begun. That night, Kael returned to his chambers in silence. The mark still pulsed, whispering in a language older than his bloodline. He thought of Seraphine, her power, her eyes in the mirror, the growing chasm between them. Outside, thunder rolled. The moonlight dimmed. And in the distance, from somewhere within the east wing, came the unmistakable sound of glass shattering, followed by Seraphine's scream. Chapter 13, The Shattered Bond. The scream cleaved the silence. Kael was already moving before thought could form. The corridor stretched before him in a blur of white stone and flickering torchlight, his boots striking like thunder on the marble floor. Servants scattered at his approach, their faces pale, whispering prayers as if they already knew something divine and terrible had been unleashed. He could feel her. Seraphine's fear bled through the bond, raw and pulsing. Each beat of his heart matched the rhythm of her panic, dragging him down a spiral of shared pain and confusion. The closer he drew to her chambers, the stronger it became, like walking through fire that remembered its shape. He shoved open the gilded doors. The room was drenched in moonlight, but the air shimmered wrong, thick with the scent of burnt silver and ozone. The mirror, her favorite mirror, the one she'd used to study the mark upon her neck, lay shattered across the floor. Each shard reflected something different. A sky of blood, a field of wolves, 1,000 pale eyes watching from beyond the veil. And in the center of it all stood Seraphine. Her gown clung to her as though alive, rippling with faint luminescence. Her eyes were glazed, distant, reflecting both fear and awe. The mark on her collarbone flared brighter than before, branching tendrils of silver curling down her arm like veins of light. Seraphine, Kael breathed, his voice low, dangerous with urgency. What happened? She turned to him slowly as if hearing through water. It spoke to me. What did? The mirror. Her lips trembled. Or, the thing inside it. Kael crossed the room in 2 strides, grasping her shoulders. You should have called the guard. I did. Her voice was hollow. But they didn't answer. He followed her gaze. The 2 guards stationed outside her door were still there, stone still. Eyes open, throats marked with the same glowing sigil that burned on Seraphine's skin. Kael's blood ran cold. Moonfire, he whispered. Seraphine flinched at the word. It tried to pull me through the reflection. I saw another me. She had your eyes, Kael, but they were burning. She said, the bond is broken and the gods will feed. Then the glass shattered. Kael turned toward the fragments. The reflection that stared back wasn't his own. It was twisted, shadowed, crowned with flame. The wolf within him snarled. This is no ordinary omen. Someone is manipulating the veil. The priestess, Seraphine said softly. She warned me earlier today that the eclipse mark had chosen me. But what if she wasn't warning? What if she was summoning? Kael looked at her, jaw clenched. Then she's opened a door neither of us can close. He reached to touch her cheek, but the bond flared violently. Silver fire arced between their skin, burning hot enough to make them both cry out. Kael recoiled, his palms smoking faintly. Seraphine's eyes filled with tears. We can't even touch without pain. It's the bond, Kael growled. It's evolving faster than we can control. Her expression broke then, a mix of anger and despair. You think I don't know that? Every time I close my eyes I feel you. Your rage, your grief, your hunger. It's like drowning in someone else's soul. Kael's voice softened just a fraction. And you think I don't feel the same? You burn through me, Seraphine. Every heartbeat, every breath. I can't tell where I end and you begin. She looked up, trembling. Then why does it feel like we're tearing apart instead of coming together? For a moment, silence filled the chamber, thick, suffocating. Then a whisper slid through the air, faint but unmistakable, because one must die for the other to ascend. The words came from everywhere and nowhere. The torches flickered. Shadows lengthened. Kael's instinct screamed. He shoved Seraphine back just as the air above the mirror shards convulsed, spinning into a vortex of silver smoke. From it emerged a faint, spectral figure, the reflection of Seraphine herself, eyes blank, smiling a bloodless smile. Who are you? Kael roared. The apparition tilted her head. I am what the bond has promised. What she will become. Lies? Seraphine spat, stepping forward despite the tremor in her limbs. You are nothing but a trick of the priestess. The reflection's smile widened. If I am a trick, then why does the mark burn when he speaks your name? Seraphine gasped, clutching her shoulder. The mark pulsed violently, threads of light cracking across her skin like molten glass. Kael moved instinctively, trying to steady her, but the fire leapt between them again, searing both. The reflection laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You see? The bond is not love. It is consumption. And before the eclipse ends, One of you will be the other's ruin. Then she shattered, the smoke dispersing into a hiss of light and ash. Seraphine collapsed, breathing hard. Kael caught her this time, ignoring the pain as the bond burned between them. "I won't let it take you," he said through gritted teeth. "I don't care what the gods demand." She looked up at him, eyes full of sorrow and something dangerously close to devotion. "You can't fight the moon, Kael?" His voice was low, rough. "Then I'll drag it from the sky." Outside, thunder rolled again, and in its wake came the sound of distant bells, ringing from the temple of Lunara. A signal. A summons. The high priestess was calling them both. Chapter 14. The Priestess's Decree. The temple bells tolled like a heartbeat echoing through stone, deep, resonant, and impossible to ignore. Each peal seemed to shake the palace walls, vibrating through the marble halls like the voice of a god demanding obedience. Seraphine stood at the balcony of her chamber, the dawn light a pale imitation of moonfire. Below, the Moonstone Palace was awakening in confusion, courtiers gathering in the courtyards, guards shifting uneasily at the summons that had come not from the throne, but from the temple. Only the high priestess had the authority to command the bells in daylight. And she had done so without the king's consent. Kael's reflection appeared behind Seraphine in the glass, his gaze sharp and shadowed. His wolf still lingered close to the surface, a faint glow behind his irises, a coiled tension in his stance. "She's moving faster than expected," he muttered. "She means to claim divine right before the eclipse even begins." Seraphine turned to face him, her composure brittle but intact. "She's calling judgment, Kael. Against us." He met her eyes. "Then we answer it together." The temple of Lunara was carved into the city's highest cliff, a monument of white stone and stained glass that caught the sun and turned it into 1,000 fractured moons. Inside, the air was cool and perfumed with sacred smoke. The high dais, reserved for royal and divine decrees, now bore the priestess herself. She was draped in silken veils the color of blood and snow, her silver hair bound in ritual braids, her eyes luminous with the cold fire of conviction. Around her stood the entire moon court, nobles, generals, and elders, drawn like moths to a prophecy they did not yet understand. When Kael and Seraphine entered, the murmurs began immediately. "The cursed king returns. The queen's mark glows still. The bond has turned unnatural." Seraphine felt every whisper like a blade, but she held her chin high. Kael's presence beside her was both shield and storm. His power rippled through the chamber, quiet but undeniable. The high priestess raised her hands and silence fell. "My lords and ladies of the moon court," she began, her voice a hymn sharpened by malice. "We gather under the goddess's gaze to speak of corruption, of bonds that defy divine order." Kael's expression darkened. "You speak boldly, priestess. Choose your words with care." She smiled, a slow, serpentine curve. "Oh, I choose them as the goddess whispers them. The eclipse nears and the veil between mortal and divine thins. Through the ritual of reflection, the truth has been revealed. The royal bond is tainted." Gasps echoed. Even seasoned lords flinched. Seraphine's voice was soft but cutting. "You twist what you do not understand. The bond awakened as the goddess decreed." The priestess's gaze snapped to her. "And yet it burns. It devours. It brings death to those who guard your chambers, does it not?" The crowd shifted uneasily. Kael stiffened beside her. Seraphine's pulse quickened. The deaths were a warning, not proof of corruption. "No," the priestess said, stepping down from the dais, each step deliberate. "They were the first sacrifices demanded by the curse you have unleashed. The moon has marked you, Queen Seraphine Valehart, not as Luna, but as the harbinger of ruin." The words struck like lightning. A dozen voices broke into murmurs. The court's unity wavered, wolves sniffing the air for blood. Kael took a step forward, the command in his tone unmistakable. "Enough." The priestess turned her gaze to him, her voice dripping reverence and venom alike. "Even you, my king, are bound to her contagion. Your wolf was sealed by the goddess's mercy, but now you would let this woman's defiance undo what divine hands once contained." Kael's control slipped. The torches flickered, their flames bending toward him. His voice dropped into the growl of something more primal. You forget yourself, priestess. You stand in my temple, speaking of my Luna as though she were a curse. The high priestess spread her arms, eyes glowing white. Then prove her purity. Submit her to the trial of moonfire, before the eclipse, before all the court. If her bond is true, the flames will not harm her. If it is corruption, she smiled, a ghost of cruelty, the fire will cleanse her. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to pause. Seraphine's heart hammered in her chest. Trial by moonfire, a sacred ordeal meant only for traitors and heretics. None had survived it in living memory. Kael stepped in front of her instantly. You will not touch her. Then you defy the goddess herself, the priestess replied, her tone sweet as poison. The court erupted in whispers again, fear, awe, betrayal. Seraphine saw it then, the trap laid bare. The priestess had not come to judge, she had come to divide. Every word, every ritual, every whisper of prophecy had been crafted to turn the court against the throne. And it was working. The noble's eyes flicked between king and queen, between loyalty and fear. Seraphine placed a trembling hand on Kael's arm, the bond flaring faintly between them. If I refuse, she whispered, they'll call me coward. If I accept and fail. You won't fail, he said, voice raw with conviction. She looked up at him, truly looked. Beneath his fury and defiance she saw terror. Not for himself but for her. Then she turned to the priestess and raised her chin. If the goddess demands proof, she shall have it. Kael's head whipped toward her. Seraphine. Her gaze stayed on the priestess. I will walk through your moonfire. But when I rise from the flames, you will kneel before your Luna and confess your deceit. A ripple tore through the room, shock, fear, awe. The priestess's smile faltered for the briefest instant. So be it, she said. At the next full moon, the eve of the eclipse, the court shall witness your trial. As Kael and Seraphine turned to leave, the priestess's voice followed them like a curse. Pray that the flames love you more than he does, my queen, for only one will survive their touch. Chapter 15, Trial of Moonfire. The night of the trial came cloaked in mist and silver fire. The moon hung swollen and low, its edge already tinged with shadow, a whisper of the coming eclipse. Every soul in the moon court gathered upon the temple terraces, their faces half hidden behind ceremonial veils. The air was alive with fear and awe, thick with the scent of burning sage and the promise of judgment. At the heart of the courtyard stood the circle of moonfire, a ring of pale flame conjured from sacred oils and silver salts. It shimmered without smoke, an ethereal blaze that devoured neither stone nor air, only truth. If her soul was pure, the flames would part for her. If she was cursed, they would consume her completely. Seraphine stood before the circle in white, her gown woven with moon thread that caught the light and made her seem almost spectral. Every step toward the circle felt heavier, as though the goddess herself pressed down upon her shoulders. At the dais above, the high priestess raised her hands. By decree of the moon and the law of our ancestors, she intoned, the Luna shall stand before the sacred flame to prove the purity of her bond. Let no hand interfere, not even the king's. Kael stood in the shadows beside the dais, forbidden to intervene. His face was carved from fury and helplessness. The glow in his eyes betrayed the beast beneath, pacing, snarling, aching. When the priestess gestured toward Seraphine, the crowd parted like a wound. Seraphine looked once toward Kael. His jaw clenched. His fists were bleeding from where his claws had pierced his palms. Their bond pulsed faintly between them, a heartbeat shared across the distance. You don't have to do this, his voice brushed her mind, rough and breaking. She answered with a single thought, I do. For both of us. And then she stepped into the circle. The moment her foot crossed the threshold, the flames rose. Silver light swallowed the night, spiraling upward like the breath of gods. The crowd gasped, even the priestess drew back. Seraphine stood still as the heat licked around her ankles. At first it was warmth, then pain, then agony. The fire sought her truth, searing through her defenses, devouring illusion and doubt. Visions burst behind her eyes, flashes of Kael's face, the war that bound their bloodlines the moment she first donned her crown. Love is weakness, her mother's voice echoed. Power demands distance. The flames climbed higher, curling around her waist like spectral serpents. Her breath caught, her vision blurred. She could feel the bond inside her burning too, the thread that tied her soul to Kael's trembling under divine scrutiny. She felt his panic surge through the link. Seraphine, stop. The fire. But she couldn't stop. This was no longer trial, it was revelation. A deeper voice filled her mind, ancient, cold, and cruel. Would you defy me, child of Valehart? Would you bind what I once unbound? The moon goddess. Her presence was vast, endless, a cold ocean pressing against the walls of Seraphine's soul. Seraphine's knees hit the stone. The flames coiled higher, white-hot now, swallowing her gown and hair in halos of silver. You would make yourself my equal, the goddess hissed. You who love a broken king. Through the agony, Seraphine's lips parted. No, not equal. She looked up at the moon, her eyes wet, her voice trembling but fierce. I would make myself whole. The flames flared, a blinding inferno that sent half the court to their knees. Above, Kael roared. The sound wasn't human. It split the air, shaking the temple foundations. His wolf tore through the surface of his skin, silver veins crackling beneath his flesh. He lunged forward, guards restraining him, his fury filling the world like thunder. But then, Seraphine rose. The fire parted around her. The white gown was gone, replaced by a radiance that clung to her like living moonlight. Her hair streamed in the wind, her eyes glowing with the same silver fire that once burned her. Gasps rippled through the court. The flames bowed before her feet. And the mark, the dormant eclipse bond upon her skin, blazed open, spreading in patterns of light across her throat and heart. The crowd stumbled back in awe and terror. Kael fell still, chest heaving. The wolf within him quieted. The high priestess took a step backward, her face pale beneath her veil. Impossible, she whispered. Seraphine turned her gaze upon her, no longer trembling, no longer silent. You wanted proof, she said, her voice a melody of human and divine. The goddess has given it. The priestess tried to speak, but the fire behind Seraphine flared once more, and its light revealed the truth. The priestess's shadow moved against the flame, a shape dark and twisting, no longer human at all. The crowd screamed. Seraphine's expression hardened. You call me cursed? You who carry her corruption within your own soul? The priestess shrieked, a sound that shattered the stained glass high above. And just like that, the flames died. The circle was nothing but ash. Seraphine collapsed. Kael broke through the guards and caught her before she struck the stone. Her body trembled in his arms, her pulse weak but steady. He pressed his forehead to hers, his voice raw. You survived the fire. Her lips curved faintly. No, Kael. I became it. Above them the moon pulsed once, like a living heart. The eclipse had begun. Chapter 16, Ashes and Oaths. The temple was silent after the fire. Not the silence of peace, but of shock, of hundreds of hearts beating too fast and too hard beneath robes and armor. Smoke drifted between the pillars like mourning veils. The once bright moonlight was fractured, split by the rising shadow of the coming eclipse. And at the center of the ruin, Kael knelt, cradling Seraphine's limp form in his arms. Her skin, once pale, now shimmered faintly beneath the surface, like liquid moonlight flowed in her veins. The mark across her throat, the eclipse sigil, pulsed gently with every beat of her heart, mirroring his own. He brushed her cheek with shaking fingers. Seraphine, wake up. Nothing. The high priestess was gone, vanished in the chaos, leaving only a ring of blackened ash where she once stood. Her disciples whispered prayers that sounded more like curses. Guards muttered about omens and treason. Kael barely heard them. He gathered her closer and whispered in the old tongue, a language older than oaths, older than his crown. Words he had sworn never to speak again, binding his soul to hers in a promise carved through centuries. By fang and flame, by blood and breath, return to me. The mark on his wrist, the twin of hers, flared. The air around them trembled. And then, a shudder of breath. Seraphine's chest rose sharply. Her eyes snapped open, silver burning bright within them. The sound that followed wasn't quite a gasp, more like the world itself inhaling. She stared at him, at everything, as though seeing for the first time through two layers of existence, mortal and divine. Kael? Her voice was soft, resonant, otherworldly. It's done. He exhaled, a broken, grateful sound. You scared me, my queen? She managed a faint smile. I scared myself. They moved her from the courtyard before dawn. The temple was sealed by decree of the crown, though the truth of what happened spread through the city like wildfire. Some said the Luna had been chosen by the goddess herself. Others whispered that she had usurped divinity, that she had stolen the moon's flame. By sunrise the streets were divided. Worship or fear. Reverence or rebellion. And above it all the eclipse deepened. In the royal chambers, Seraphine sat before the mirror, her reflection haloed in dim light. Kael stood behind her, silent, watching. The mark along her collarbone glowed faintly, shifting in rhythm with the moon beyond the window. Her fingers brushed over it, not in vanity but disbelief. It feels alive, she murmured. As though it listens. It does, Kael said. Our bond has changed. The fire burned the curse, but it didn't end it, it merged it. She turned to face him. Merged? He hesitated. You carry part of me now. And I, part of you. The goddess's fire made us halves of the same power. Seraphine studied him, then rose. Her eyes held no fear. Then we'll learn to wield it together. Kael's expression darkened. If we can control it. He moved closer, the air between them charged. When you were in the fire, I felt everything. Your pain, your resolve, even your defiance of her. You didn't just survive, Seraphine. You challenged the moon herself. Her gaze softened. Someone had to remind her that mercy is strength, not sin. For a heartbeat, silence, and then his hand found hers. His voice was a whisper, a confession heavy with everything unspoken. You would burn the heavens to protect this kingdom. I would burn the world to protect you. The bond pulsed, not violently but like a living thing recognizing its twin rhythm. The air around them warmed, shimmered, and for an instant Kael saw through her eyes, the moon bleeding silver, the goddess's shadow twisting across the veil between worlds. Then, a voice. Faint. Distant. He is not what he seems, child of Valehart. His heart beats with the beast's hunger, and when the eclipse ends, so will your reign. Seraphine gasped, clutching her temple. The voice faded, leaving only echoes. Kael caught her, concern flashing to anger. What did you see? She steadied herself. A warning, or a lie? He frowned. From whom? Her gaze lifted to the moon. From the one who once called herself goddess. Later that night, Seraphine stood alone on the balcony. The city below flickered with candlelight, thousands of offerings burning in silence. The eclipse shadow had swallowed half the moon. Kael approached quietly, cloak drawn around him. They think you're their savior, he said. Or their doom. Seraphine didn't turn. Both may be true. He stepped beside her. Then we'll make sure it's you they remember, not the curse, not the goddess, not the fire. She looked up at him, moonlight tracing the sharp lines of his face. Then we swear it. Kael met her gaze, fierce and unflinching. Swear what? That whatever comes, eclipse, prophecy or God, we face it together. No more secrets. No more running. He nodded once, solemnly. By flame and shadow. And by heart and oath, she finished. Their hands joined, and as their palms touched, the bond flared in silent light, sealing the vow. Above them the moon darkened fully, and the world shifted. Somewhere far beyond mortal sight, something ancient stirred, awakened by their defiance. Chapter 17, The Midnight Conclave. The bells of the Moonstone Palace rang 13 times, an omen, not a summons. In the heart of the throne hall, nobles gathered like ravens scenting blood. The air was thick with incense and fear. The flames in the sconces burned low, guttering beneath the faint shimmer of the nearing eclipse. Queen Seraphine Valehart entered alone. Her gown was black silk edged in silver thread, the color of mourning and defiance, and upon her shoulders rested the cloak of Luna's authority, shimmering faintly as though the stars themselves had been woven into it. Her hair, unbound, cascaded like midnight rain. Every step echoed like judgment. At the far end of the hall, the High Council waited, dukes, priestesses, generals, and the whispering vultures of the court. "Your Majesty," murmured Lord Corvin, bowing low, "the council convenes under grievous circumstances. The High Priestess has vanished. The temple stands in ruin. And the people cry for truth." Seraphine's gaze was cold steel. "Truth is rarely what the people want, Lord Corvin. They want someone to blame." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Another voice, Lady Thessa, pale and trembling, clutched a prayer bead. "The eclipse draws near. Without the priestess, the final rites cannot be performed. The goddess's will." "The goddess's will," Seraphine interrupted, "has left this kingdom bleeding for generations. I will not bow to a deity who feeds on our fear." The hall erupted in gasps and whispers. Kael entered then, the sound of his boots cutting through the noise like thunder. His presence was a storm barely contained, tall, dark, his eyes a dangerous gold that shimmered faintly with his wolf's light. When he took his place beside her, the murmurs died instantly. "The king and Luna stand united," Kael said, voice low but resonant. "The priestess's disappearance is being investigated. Until then we govern. Not the temples. Not prophecy." Lord Corvin's jaw tightened. "And if the goddess herself demands otherwise?" Kael's eyes flashed. "Then she may come claim her throne in person." The council dispersed in uneasy silence, each noble bowing lower than the last, not in reverence but in fear. When the great doors closed behind them, only Kael and Seraphine remained. She exhaled slowly, tension bleeding from her shoulders. "They will turn against us." "They already have," Kael said. "They just haven't chosen the hour." She walked toward the balcony overlooking the city. From this height, the world looked calm, a lie painted in moonlight. The mark burned stronger each night. "I feel something moving in the bond, a pull toward the temple ruins." Kael frowned. "A trap." "Or a message," she countered. "If the priestess is gone, someone else is calling." Kael stepped closer, his hand brushing the edge of her arm. "You mean her?" Seraphine's reflection in the glass flickered, and for a heartbeat she saw two silhouettes instead of one, herself and a pale figure crowned in broken moonlight, whispering through the glass. "Do you still believe you are free, child of the Valehart blood?" Seraphine blinked, the vision gone. Her hand trembled, though her face did not betray it. "She's watching." Kael's voice hardened. "Then let her see what she's created." That night, beneath the shroud of eclipse shadow, Seraphine summoned a secret meeting, a conclave not of nobles but of wolves. In the catacombs beneath the palace, silver candles flickered across stone. Alpha leaders from the northern and southern packs gathered, cloaked and wary. These were not courtiers but warriors, blood sworn to the Valehart crown by ancient oath. Kael stood at her right. The air between them thrummed with restrained power. "We stand at the edge of the eclipse," Seraphine began, her voice carrying through the chamber. "The priestess would see us divided, would call the goddess's wrath upon us. But no god will save this realm. Only we can." One of the alphas, a grizzled man with scars across his jaw, stepped forward. "You speak of rebellion against the divine, Your Majesty. That is not courage, that is blasphemy." Seraphine's gaze was like ice breaking. "Then call it blasphemy. Call it treason. But understand this, every time the goddess chooses a worthy sacrifice, it is our people who bleed. Not hers. Ours." Her words struck deep. The chamber stirred with murmurs, fear but also something sharper. Kael's voice followed, calm and edged like a blade. "You have all felt the change. The moon's fire no longer answers to her priests. The bond between Luna and King burns with a power that is ours. This is not divine punishment, it is freedom." The alphas looked between them. Some bowed their heads. Others clenched fists in thought. Then, a voice from the shadows. "You speak of freedom," it said softly, "but do you understand the cost?" A figure stepped forward, hooded in silver gray. When she lowered her hood, Seraphine's breath caught. It was Seraphine Valehart, her aunt, thought dead since the last eclipse war. Her eyes glowed faintly with the same lunar light that burned in Seraphine's veins. "Aunt," Seraphine whispered. "How?" Irindra's smile was sorrowful. "The goddess does not destroy her instruments, child. She hides them until she needs them again." Kael tensed, hand instinctively moving toward his sword. "You serve her still?" "No," Irindra said. "I escaped her. But not before I saw the truth. The eclipse is not a curse of the goddess's making. It was forged by man, by the first Valehart king and his mate, when they sought to steal the moon's fire." The chamber fell silent. Seraphine's pulse raced. "You mean, our bloodline is the origin of the curse," Irindra finished. "And it will end only when the bond between King and Luna burns clean through time, through death if need be." The silver mark on Seraphine's throat flickered violently, as though the words themselves had struck it. Kael caught her arm as she staggered. "Enough," he growled. "No more riddles. What are you saying?" Irindra's gaze turned solemn. "I am saying, my king, that before the eclipse ends, one of you must die, or the fire will consume the world." The candles shuddered and went out. Darkness swallowed the conclave. And above the palace, the moon's light dimmed to blood red. Chapter 18, The Blood Oath Prophecy. The moon bled over the spires of the Moonstone Palace. Silver no longer touched the stone, only red, deep as sacrifice. Seraphine woke with the echo of her aunt's voice still whispering through her mind. "One of you must die." The chamber was quiet except for the crackle of dying embers in the hearth. Kael stood near the balcony, half in shadow, his back bare beneath the silver spill of light. His skin was marked with faint runes, scars she had never noticed before, as if the curse itself had been carved into his flesh. She rose slowly, the silken sheets whispering against her skin. "You didn't sleep." Kael's voice was rough. "I haven't since the conclave." He turned to her. His eyes glowed faintly gold. Irindra spoke the words of an ancient oath, not prophecy, Seraphine. A curse sealed in blood. Seraphine wrapped her robe around her shoulders, stepping closer. "Then tell me what you know. No more silence. No more half-truths." Kael's jaw clenched. For a heartbeat, he hesitated. Then he crossed to the table where old parchment lay unfurled, its ink faded but legible in the moonlight. "This," he said, touching the page, "is the Oath of Valehart. The first Luna and King, Alaric and Isara, bound their souls to the moon goddess to protect the wolves from extinction. But they broke the sacred vow. They took her power for themselves. To punish them, the goddess wove their love into chains, one heart cursed to burn, the other to bleed. Every generation after would inherit that bond." Seraphine's fingers brushed the parchment, tracing the ancient sigil. It pulsed faintly, resonating with the mark at her throat. "And now we are the end of that line." Kael nodded. "The bond that awakened between us is the last echo of that divine fire. If it burns unchecked through the eclipse, it could consume both our souls, or tear the realm apart." She stared at him, the words heavy as stone. "And Irindra's warning, that one must die, is the final tether," Kael said quietly. "A blood oath cannot be broken, only fulfilled." Silence. The kind that hollowed the heart. Seraphine's mind raced, not with fear but defiance. She had spent her life bending beneath the weight of destiny, of titles, of power not chosen but inherited. She would not let fate write her ending. "There must be another way," she whispered. "If the curse was forged by man, it can be unmade by man." Kael's expression softened. "You speak like a queen." She met his gaze. "I speak like someone who refuses to die for the sins of ghosts." By dawn, Seraphine had summoned her aunt. Irindra appeared in the council chamber like mist through glass, not entirely present, her form shimmering with pale lunar essence. Kael stood beside Seraphine, his hand resting near his sword, his wolf stirring restlessly beneath his skin. Seraphine's tone was sharp, regal. "You said one of us must die to end the curse. Tell me the whole truth, not the part meant to frighten me." Irindra's eyes, bright and mournful, lingered on her niece. "You are more like Isara than you know." She too believed she could defy prophecy. "I'm not Isara," Seraphine said, "and I will not repeat her mistakes." Irindra's form flickered, and for a heartbeat her voice changed, layered with something older, colder, divine. "Then learn what she never could." The chamber darkened. The walls dissolved into silver mist, and the three of them stood in a vast void, a memory realm shaped by moonlight and shadow. Beneath their feet lay a mirror surface of liquid silver. Above them the eclipse loomed, a burning eye. From the mist emerged two figures, spectral and tragic, Alaric and Isara, the first king and Luna. Seraphine's breath caught. The figures were bound by chains of light, their hands reaching but never touching. Every time they drew close, the bonds burned them apart. Isara's voice, sorrowful and fierce, echoed through the chamber. "We sought unity and found ruin. The bond is creation and destruction, the mirror of the soul's truth." Alaric's reply followed, low and pained. "Only by surrender, by choosing love over fear, can the bond be remade." The vision trembled, collapsing in a flare of white fire. Seraphine stumbled back, clutching her chest as her mating mark burned like molten silver. She saw, in a flash, Kael's wolf tearing through battlefields, her own reflection fracturing beneath the weight of moonfire, and a single thread of light connecting them through time. When the chamber reformed, Irindra's projection knelt, trembling. "The prophecy is not just death, Seraphine. It is choice. One of you must surrender your power, your divine spark, to mend the rift. But power never dies peacefully." Seraphine steadied her breathing. "Then I'll find a way to control it. To rewrite it." Irindra shook her head. "You would defy the goddess herself?" "I already have," Seraphine said softly. That night, Seraphine stood again upon the palace balcony, watching the eclipse inch closer. Kael joined her in silence. "The prophecy doesn't frighten me anymore," she murmured. "What frightens me is how much I want to believe we can win." Kael looked at her then, not as king to queen but man to woman. "You've already changed the curse, Seraphine. You've made me remember what it means to want something more than survival." The air between them shimmered, the bond thrumming like a heartbeat shared. She reached for his hand. The moment their fingers touched, moonfire rippled across the horizon. The bond pulsed, alive, aware. Seraphine met his eyes. "Then let's burn the prophecy together." Above them, the moon's light fractured into twin flares, one silver, one crimson, as though the heavens themselves could not decide whether to bless or condemn their vow. Chapter 19, Crown of Fire, Crown of Ash. The throne room burned with light. Not from flame, but from moonfire. Silver radiance poured through the vast stained windows, twisting across the marble floor like veins of living light. The eclipse had begun its slow descent, bleeding crimson into the heavens. Every creature within the Moonstone Palace felt it, the tightening of the air, the pull of something vast and ancient pressing down upon the realm. Seraphine sat upon the throne, her crown gleaming like forged starlight. Kael stood beside her, a silent wall of control, though beneath his composure she could feel the tension clawing at him. His wolf was stirring. The High Council of Alphas knelt before them in uneasy reverence, the scent of fear sharp in the air. "Your Majesty," one of them began, Lord Corrin of the Ironfang clan, voice trembling despite his bulk, "the priesthood demands audience. They say the Queen's visions defy the goddess's will. That your union invites divine wrath." Seraphine's eyes hardened. "The priesthood spreads poison because they fear change. Let them come. The throne does not kneel to whispers." A ripple of unease swept through the chamber. Even now, many could not decide which sovereign they truly feared, the silent king or the queen who spoke with fire in her voice. Kael's hand flexed at his side. She felt the heat of his restraint through the bond, the pulse of his barely contained rage. He leaned close, his voice a low growl meant only for her. "They test you because they cannot test me. They think my wolf remains bound." Seraphine's lips curved faintly. "Then let them think it, until it's too late." When the doors burst open, the high priestess entered like a storm. Irindra's silver robes trailed across the marble, her eyes aglow with unholy light. Behind her came acolytes bearing censers of smoke that smelled of ash and blood. King Kael. Queen Seraphine. Her voice echoed through the hall like 1,000 bells. The goddess's patience wears thin. You have twisted the sacred bond into blasphemy. The eclipse is upon us, and it will cleanse what you have defiled. Gasps swept the court. Kael's eyes darkened. You dare speak of defilement when your own hands drip with corruption? The priestess smiled, unfazed. I serve the will of the moon. You serve your lust. Seraphine rose from her throne, slow, deliberate. Her gown shimmered like liquid silver, and the bond pulsed at her throat like a heartbeat made visible. You mistake love for sin, she said. You mistake power for purity. But tell me, priestess, what god do you serve when you kill in her name? The acolytes stirred uneasily. For a moment, doubt flickered in the priestess's eyes, but then she spread her arms wide, her voice booming with false conviction. The goddess demands balance. And balance requires blood. From the shadows of the hall, soldiers in temple armor emerged, not Kael's but the priestess's. The air thickened with threat. Kael stepped forward, his wolf growling beneath his skin. You've overplayed your hand. Irindra's smile sharpened. Have I? The goddess already chose her vessel. Her eyes rolled white. Silver light burst from her body, and when she spoke again, it was not her voice that filled the room, it was something ancient. The moon judges all. The bond will burn. The stained glass shattered. The floor cracked open with a tremor of divine force. Kael lunged forward, pulling Seraphine behind him as moonfire erupted from the priestess's outstretched hands. It struck the throne, melting gold to slag. The court erupted into chaos. Alphas fled. Guards drew blades. The acolytes fell to their knees, praying or screaming, it was hard to tell which. Kael roared, half man and half wolf, his eyes burning gold. His voice broke through the storm. Get her out. Seraphine resisted. No. She raised her hands, and the bond's power surged through her veins like a tide. Silver light burst from her palms, colliding with the priestess's magic in a violent clash of fire and frost. The impact shattered the air, flinging both women backward. Seraphine crashed into the dais steps, dazed. She felt the mating mark blaze and through it Kael's pain. He staggered, clutching his chest as if something inside him had torn free. Kael. His head snapped back, eyes glowing feral. His voice was not his own when he spoke. It's too late, Seraphine. The wolf is awake. Then came the sound, deep, guttural, primal. The growl of a king unchained. When the dust settled, the throne was gone, melted to blackened ruin. The court lay in ruins of smoke and ash. The priestess had vanished, her acolytes scattered. Seraphine knelt beside Kael, whose body trembled with barely restrained transformation. His claws cut through the stone floor as he struggled to stay human. She cradled his face in her hands. Look at me. Stay with me. His breath came ragged. I can't. The wolf wants blood. It knows the prophecy. It knows what you are. Her heart broke. Then let it see me. All of me. I'm not your enemy, Kael. I'm your bond. Her mark flared, pouring silver light into his chest. His heartbeat synced with hers, uneven, painful but alive. Slowly the beast retreated, leaving Kael trembling, eyes wet with fury and exhaustion. He pressed his forehead to hers. The eclipse has begun. There's no stopping it now. Seraphine drew a shaking breath. Then we don't stop it. We survive it. Outside, the moon split the sky into two halves, one burning red, one gleaming white. And above the ruined palace, the crown of the Alpha King glowed faintly amid the smoke, half fire, half ash. Chapter 20, The Broken Moon. The moon was dying. Not fading, shattering. Its silver face, once whole, split along jagged seams of red and shadow. From each fracture poured a rain of light that fell across the realm like burning snow. Forests whispered in fear. Rivers turned to mirrors. Wolves across the lands howled in a single, mournful voice, their howls echoing the unraveling of something sacred. And in the heart of the ruin that had once been the Moonstone Palace, Seraphine ran. The great hall burned behind her, its marble spires collapsing in molten streams. Smoke and moonfire mixed in the air, stinging her lungs. Every breath came sharp, every step a wound. She could feel Kael's rage clawing at the bond, wild, animal, uncontrollable. Kael, listen to me. But there was no answer. Only the distant roar of something monstrous breaking free. She stumbled into the courtyard. The statues of the old kings were crumbling, their stone faces splitting like eggshells beneath the pressure of divine wrath. Above, the eclipse had widened into a halo of fire. The goddess's voice, soft, sorrowful, immense, trembled in the air. One bond must break for the other to live. Seraphine fell to her knees, clutching her head. The voice echoed through her, not around her. Every word a blade drawn from her own soul. No, she whispered. There must be another way. But the goddess did not answer. Only silence. Only the sound of wings, black and wide, unfurling above the palace gates. Kael emerged from the smoke. He was no longer the man she loved. His form rippled between human and wolf, flesh and fur and flame interwoven, eyes burning gold-white. The mark on his throat had split open, leaking silver light like blood. Kael, she breathed. He bared his teeth, every word laced with struggle. You should have run farther. I'm not leaving you. You don't understand. His claws dug into the ground, gouging furrows through the marble. The wolf has taken the throne. I can't, he choked, voice fracturing into a growl. I can't keep it back. She stood slowly, the storm tugging at her gown. Then let it see me, Kael. Let it remember. The wolf in him lifted its head, eyes gleaming like molten moons. For an instant she thought she saw recognition, then it lunged. Seraphine raised her hands and the bond blazed open between them. Silver fire met golden fury. The impact split the air with a crack that sent shockwaves through the ruined palace. Sparks flew in every direction, tracing the outlines of constellations long forgotten. She felt her strength failing, but she held her ground. You're not my enemy. You're mine, Kael Vale. You swore that beneath the blood moon. The beast roared, then hesitated. Through the chaos, through the fire, something human flickered in his eyes. His chest heaved, torn between rage and recognition. His voice came broken, hoarse. Seren? She ran to him, placing her hand over the mark. Yes, it's me. The glow steadied. The fire dimmed. But above them, the sky cracked once more, a fracture running through the heart of the moon itself. Seraphine looked up, horror dawning. No. The broken pieces of the moon began to fall, vast, burning fragments raining toward the earth like a celestial storm. The eclipse was collapsing. The goddess's power, no longer contained, tore through reality. Kael grabbed her, pulling her close. We have to leave the palace. The temple, she gasped. The prophecy said the door between worlds lies beneath it. It's the only place the goddess can hear us now. He nodded, jaw clenched. Then hold on. With a single bound, he leapt through the ruined archways, carrying her as the world fell apart behind them. Towers shattered. Rivers of molten moonlight poured across the land. Every howl in the kingdom rose in unison, a requiem for the dying sky. As they reached the palace gates, Seraphine looked back one last time. The moonstone throne, seat of generations, collapsed in on itself, reduced to cinders and silence. Tears streaked her soot-stained face. The crown is gone. Kael looked down at her, eyes glowing faintly with pain and tenderness. Then let the world crown us in ashes. And together they disappeared into the storm, two souls bound by love and ruin, racing toward the only place where destiny could still be rewritten. Above them the moon cracked one final time, and went dark. Chapter 21, The Temple of Echoes. The storm chased them into the mountains. Lightning split the heavens like the fury of a dying god, each strike illuminating the jagged cliffs where once the high temples of the moon stood proud. Now only one remained, half buried in snow and silence. The Temple of Echoes. It was older than the kingdom itself, carved into the spine of the world, built by hands that no longer existed in memory. The walls pulsed faintly with veins of silver ore, like the heartbeat of something sleeping beneath the stone. As Seraphine and Kael stepped through its ruined gates, the storm outside dimmed to a whisper. The air within was sacred and haunted. Every sound they made echoed back, but not as a reflection, as an answer. Kael's boots struck the marble, and the sound returned as 1,000 footsteps. When Seraphine breathed, the air exhaled with her, carrying whispers that weren't her own. "This place remembers everything," she murmured. Kael's eyes shifted, catching the ghostly glow of the runes lining the walls. "Including what we've forgotten." They descended the long corridor, torches flickering to life on their own, one by one, as if welcoming or warning them. At the far end, a circular door waited, carved from obsidian and marked with the same twin sigils that burned at their throats: sun and moon, wolf and flame. Seraphine reached for the door. Her hand hovered over the runes. "It's the same mark as ours." Kael stepped closer, voice low. "It's a seal. The bond is the key." She turned to him, eyes wide. "You mean? We open it together." The bond pulsed in response, a living thread between their hearts. Every heartbeat drew the runes brighter until they glowed white-hot. She felt the ancient magic stir, vast, endless, older than gods. The temple trembled. The door began to split down the center. When it opened, light poured through, cold, silver, endless. They stepped inside. The sanctum of the moon lay before them, an immense cavern, its ceiling an illusion of stars, its floor a mirror of still water. In the center rose an altar of glass and bone, where the goddess's reflection shimmered faintly, her form fluid, incomplete. Seraphine knelt. "We seek your truth." The reflection moved, a ripple, a voice of silk and thunder. "Child of flame, child of fawn. You ask what the heart cannot bear to hear." Kael stepped forward. "Then tell us anyway." The reflection grew brighter. 1,000 visions bloomed across the water: the rise of the first wolves, the curse of the moon, the lovers who defied the gods. Every bond that burned too bright, every throne that fell to its light. "The bond between you was never meant to heal, it was meant to end." Seraphine's breath caught. "No. One carries the spark of the sun. The other, the shadow of the moon. To unite both is to unmake the balance. The eclipse was never your salvation, it was your undoing." Kael clenched his fists. "Then why give it to us?" The goddess's reflection tilted its head, sorrow in every line. "Because only in your ruin can the world remember mercy." The floor trembled. The visions darkened, showing armies gathering in the distance, beasts stirring from the depths, the shattering of the moon spreading into the mortal realm. Seraphine's voice broke. "There must be a way to stop it." The goddess's voice softened. "There is. But it demands a price you have both feared to pay." "What price?" Kael demanded. The reflection's eyes met his, molten silver, infinite. "One must bear both halves of the bond. One must hold light and darkness together, alone. The other must become the void that binds them." Seraphine understood before he did. Her knees weakened. "You mean, one of us must vanish?" Kael turned to her, shaking his head. "No. I won't let it be you." "And I won't let it be you," she shot back, voice breaking. "Not after everything we've lost." The goddess's voice faded, leaving only the echo of their hearts beating, too fast, too fragile. The water began to rise, swirling around them like a living storm. Reflections of every moment they'd shared shimmered in its depths. Their first meeting beneath the blood moon, the wedding without love, the awakening of the mark, the kiss that changed everything. Seraphine looked up at him, eyes shining with tears and defiance. "If this is what it takes, we decide how the story ends. Not the gods." Kael stepped closer, cupping her face. "Then we end it together." The bond between them flared, not silver, not gold, but white fire, bright enough to burn away the shadows. The temple shook. The goddess's reflection shattered into 1,000 shards of light. And in that brilliance, something ancient began to awaken beneath the world. Not destruction, but rebirth. The Temple of Echoes groaned as if exhaling after centuries of silence. The ceiling fractured, revealing the broken moon above, its pieces drifting back toward one another, slowly, painfully, drawn by the force of their joined light. Seraphine's voice was barely a whisper. "Kill the bond." He smiled faintly, tears glinting like silver. "Then let it be whole again." Their hands met, and the world trembled. Light engulfed them, folding sky and soul into one. And as the temple vanished in the brilliance, the last echo whispered through the stones. Only those who remember love may rewrite destiny. Chapter 22, The Heart of the Eclipse. The world held its breath. When the light finally dimmed, Seraphine found herself standing at the center of an endless void, a sky without stars, a horizon without end. The ground beneath her shimmered like glass, reflecting a moon that wasn't there. She was alone. Kael? Her voice fractured into the emptiness. No echo answered. Only silence, vast, swallowing, divine. A cold wind swept across the plain, carrying whispers that weren't wind at all. They were heartbeats, thousands of them, the lives of her people pulsing faintly in the distance, trembling beneath the weight of the approaching eclipse. And then she saw it. Suspended above her, half sun and half shadow, the moon hung split, one side aflame with molten gold, the other drowned in icy silver. Between the halves pulsed a heart of light, bleeding across the void like liquid fire. The heart of the eclipse. It was beautiful, and dying. Each pulse dimmed the world further. Each flicker drew the halves closer to collision. When they met, she understood, everything would end. The curse, the realm, the gods themselves. But where was Kael? Kael! She cried again, louder this time, desperation cracking through her composure. You promised we'd face it together. The void shuddered. A shadow rippled across the glass-like plain, vast, broken, inhuman. Then came the growl, deep, mournful, and familiar. From the darkness emerged a colossal wolf, fur black as midnight, eyes burning silver. His breath came in storms. His claws split the light beneath him. Kael. But not as she'd ever seen him. He was both man and beast, the two halves warring within his frame, his body flickering between human form and wolf. The bond's power surged violently through him, threatening to tear him apart. Seraphine, his voice was hoarse, distorted, carried on wind and pain. You shouldn't be here. She ran to him anyway. You think I'd let you face this alone? He staggered, the wolf receding for a moment, revealing his eyes, human, aching. You don't understand. The bond, it's merging with the eclipse. If we stay connected, it will consume us both. She shook her head, tears streaking down her face. Then let it. If this is the price, I'll pay it. No, he rasped. The prophecy said one must carry both halves. You can still live, rule, save them. And live without you, she whispered. That's not living. The moon above began to tremble, the two halves pulling violently toward each other, the heart between them flaring with catastrophic brilliance. Seraphine felt it, the pull on her soul, the bond between them thrumming like a dying heartbeat. If they didn't act, the worlds would collapse into each other. The moon goddess's voice echoed faintly across the void, cold and eternal. The bond is choice made flesh. The heart of the eclipse is not punishment, it is decision. Seraphine's eyes widened. Decision. Kael looked up, realization dawning in his gaze. It's not about sacrifice. It's about unity. The goddess's whisper softened as if approving. Only when sun and moon embrace without fear shall the curse end. Seraphine stepped closer to Kael, her hand trembling as she reached for his chest. Then we ended our way. Together, not as halves but whole. He caught her hand, pressed it against his heart. Together. The light from the moon's heart descended, a beam of pure energy striking them both, searing through every vein, every memory. The bond ignited once more, not as two forces clashing, but as one truth reborn. Seraphine saw everything. His childhood beneath the shadowed forests, his defiance of the goddess, his love that had cost him everything. And Kael saw her, the lonely girl crowned too soon, the woman who refused to bow, the queen who dared to love the monster in the dark. Their souls intertwined, no longer tethered by fate but by choice. The eclipse reached its zenith. The moon's halves collided, not in destruction but fusion. Silver and gold became white fire, creation not ruin. The void trembled and light burst outward in a flood of renewal. When the storm of radiance cleared, the world had changed. Seraphine and Kael stood together on a high cliff overlooking their realm. Forests reborn, rivers gleaming like molten silver, the air humming with new life. The sky was no longer divided. The moon now bore a perfect ring of fire around its edge, the mark of their bond. Kael exhaled shakily as if breathing for the first time. Is it over? Seraphine looked to the horizon, her eyes glowing faintly with lunar fire. No. It's begun. Behind them, the ruined temples were silent. The high priestess's banners burned to ash in the wind. The goddess's voice lingered one last time in the air, not command but benediction. You have taught the divine what it means to love without chains. Seraphine turned to Kael, a small, exhausted smile curving her lips. Then let's teach the world the same. He took her hand, kissed her knuckles softly, reverently. Together, my queen. Above them, the moon blazed, no longer a symbol of curse but of unity. The heart of the eclipse beat once, twice, and settled into the rhythm of a world reborn. Chapter 23, The Dawn Pact. The first light of dawn crept across the crescent veil like a whispered promise. The sun's warmth touched the shattered towers of the Moonstone Palace, melting frost and ash alike. The banners that had once borne the sigil of the old priesthood lay torn upon the marble steps, soaked in the silvery dew of a world reborn. Queen Seraphine Valehart stood upon the palace balcony, bare feet upon the cold stone, the morning air biting against her skin. Her white gown, torn and stained by moonfire, shimmered faintly where the eclipse's power had branded it. The mark on her wrist, once a wound, now glowed softly with the same golden-silver hue as the renewed moon above. Behind her, the palace was quiet. No courtiers whispered, no guards marched. The stillness was sacred, the hush after the storm. Kael joined her, his presence announced not by sound but by the subtle shift in the air, the magnetic pull that had always drawn her to him, even when she'd pretended she didn't feel it. His hair was damp from the river where he had washed the blood of battle away, his tunic simple, unadorned. No crown rested upon his head, yet he looked more kingly than ever, stripped of divinity, yet sovereign over himself. They're gathering, he said, his voice low, still rough from exhaustion. The pacts, the council, the priestess's remnants. They await judgment. Seraphine turned, her gaze steady. Then they shall have it. Kael hesitated. You would forgive them? She tilted her head. Forgive? No. But I would understand. Her eyes softened, reflecting the dawn. They followed fear, not faith. The priestess fed them lies wrapped in the goddess's name. Now that the goddess is silent, they will look to us for what comes next. He studied her quietly, admiration flickering like an ember. You sound like someone who's already begun to rebuild. She smiled faintly. Someone has to. You've burned enough temples for one lifetime. That earned her a laugh, low, real, unguarded. The sound of it startled her. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed it. Together they descended into the grand hall, the once gilded chamber now stripped bare by conflict. What remained of the Lunar Council waited in uneasy silence. Wolves from rival packs stood shoulder to shoulder, scarred, wary, uncertain what laws would survive now that the divine order had fallen. At the center of the room, the throne stood empty. Seraphine stopped before it, her gaze sweeping over the assembly. The moon goddess's law is ended, she said, her voice clear, echoing across the chamber. Her curse was ours because we allowed fear to define what power meant. But no more. A murmur rippled through the hall, disbelief, awe, even hope. Kael stepped forward, standing beside her, his voice steady and resolute. There will be no more sacrifices. No more divine decrees. From this day, power belongs to those who choose it, not those who inherit it. A young envoy from the Western Pack, barely more than a boy, stepped out, trembling. And what of the priestess's followers? The ones who spilled royal blood in her name? Seraphine's gaze didn't waver. They will answer for what they've done. But not with death. The hall gasped softly. They will rebuild what they destroyed, she continued. The temples they defiled will become sanctuaries, not for gods but for truth. No more worship through fear. Only through remembrance. Kael looked at her, something like reverence softening the lines of his face. She was no longer the queen who had worn silence like armor. She was the woman who had looked into the heart of the eclipse and returned unbroken. And what of the crown? An older councilman asked hesitantly. Do you still rule, Majesty, now that the goddess's blessing is gone? Seraphine met Kael's eyes. For a moment they simply stood, two souls tempered in fire, no longer bound by celestial chains. Then Kael spoke, voice quiet but carrying through the hall. The goddess's blessing was never what made us rulers. Seraphine's hand found his, deliberate, visible, defiant. We will not rule as monarchs of blood, but as stewards of balance. The moon and the sun equal in light. The king and Luna bound not by fate, but by will. The room fell silent, then slowly, one by one, the wolves knelt. Not in blind reverence but in solemn accord. A pact formed then, unspoken yet stronger than any decree. The Dawn Pact. A vow that this new age would be built not upon divine chains or political deceit, but upon unity freely chosen. The end of the old world and the birth of a new moon. As the council dispersed, Kael lingered beside her, fingers brushing her wrist where the mark glowed faintly beneath the skin. You realize what you've done? She arched an eyebrow. I just rewrote the foundation of our world. I imagine the gods are rather cross. He smiled. Then let them stay in their heavens. We have a world to build. She leaned into him, the first warmth of morning touching her face. Together as always. And as the sun rose fully over the horizon, casting the first true light across the kingdom, the bells of the Moonstone Palace tolled, not in mourning but in renewal. For the first time in centuries the moon and the sun shared the same sky. Chapter 24, Ashes of the Goddess. The fires of the eclipse had burned out, but the air still tasted of moonlight and smoke. Deep beneath the palace, in the catacombs that had once belonged to the High Priestess's order, the last remnants of divine flames still flickered, pale, ghostly wisps that refused to die. The stone walls shimmered faintly with sigils of the old religion, and the scent of burnt myrrh and iron lingered, clinging like regret. Queen Seraphine moved through the dark with a single lantern in hand. Its light trembled across ancient murals, the moon goddess weeping silver tears, wolves bowing in reverence, mortals offering their hearts in chains. All of it gone. All of it hollow. Behind her, Kael's footsteps echoed softly, steady as her heartbeat. You shouldn't have come alone, he said quietly. I wasn't alone, she murmured, not looking back. You always find me. He gave a faint smile, though his eyes were wary. And yet you keep walking into places that reek of death. This place isn't death, Seraphine said. It's memory. They descended deeper until they reached the heart of the catacombs, a chamber carved entirely from moonstone. At its center burned a small fire, white as bone, held within a circle of ancient runes. The last ember of the moon goddess's divinity. Seraphine approached it, setting down the lantern. The flame pulsed faintly as if it recognized her. Kael's wolf stirred beneath his skin, uneasy. That shouldn't still exist. We ended her hold. Her hold, yes, Seraphine said, but not her essence. She knelt before the flame. Every god leaves a residue. A shadow of the power that once was. The question is, her eyes reflected the pale light, what does it remember? The fire flickered and the chamber trembled. A voice, soft and sorrowful, drifted through the air, not heard but felt. You broke the bond. You unmade the design. Kael's jaw tightened. We freed our kind from your chains. And yet, the voice whispered, you carry my fire in your blood. The flame flared, and visions bled through the air like smoke. The moon goddess herself, cloaked in light and shadow, standing upon the night sky's edge. Her eyes were endless, her face both beautiful and weary. Around her wolves knelt in devotion, their faith feeding her brilliance. But her gaze was hollow, aching. Seraphine felt it, the goddess's loneliness. A divinity built from worship but empty of warmth. You wanted love, Seraphine murmured. Not power. The vision turned toward her, and for the first time the goddess smiled. Once. Until love betrayed me. Images shattered, a mortal lover, a broken vow, a curse born of grief and fury. The bond between wolves and goddess had not been divine creation, but divine revenge. Seraphine's heart twisted. You cursed them because he left you. The voice echoed faintly, I bound their hearts so they would never abandon each other as he abandoned me. Kael's fists clenched. You enslaved us to your pain. The fire dimmed, flickering toward silence. But before it could fade, Seraphine reached out, palm hovering above the ember. No more chains, she whispered. No more gods born from sorrow. The flame pulsed once, and then she pressed her hand into it. Kael lunged forward, shouting her name, but it was too late. Light engulfed her, wrapping her in silver fire. The mark on her wrist flared, threads of lunar energy swirling through her veins. When the glow faded, the flame was gone. Only ash remained, soft, gray, cold. Seraphine exhaled slowly, her palm faintly charred, the scent of smoke clinging to her skin. It's done, she said. The goddess's essence has returned to the earth. No one will ever use her power again. Kael caught her hand gently, examining the burn. You took her fire into yourself. She met his gaze. Someone had to. She deserved peace, Kael, not erasure. For a long moment they stood there in silence, surrounded by the remnants of divinity, of faith, of centuries of pain. Finally Kael said softly, What will you do with it? Seraphine smiled faintly. Nothing. The world will have enough light when it learns to create its own. They turned and ascended together, leaving the ashes of the goddess behind, the final ghost of the old age fading into stillness. Above them, the dawn sky burned gold and crimson, and for the first time in history the moon remained visible in daylight. Two worlds no longer at war. Two souls walking forward into a future they would build themselves. Chapter 25, The Last Eclipse. The moon hung low over the valley, a pale ghost against the crimson edge of dawn. The air was thick with the scent of rain and blooming nightshade, a final whisper of the world that had been. Seraphine stood atop the cliff that overlooked the ruined temple of Lunaris, the wind tugging at the white cloak draped over her shoulders. Below her, the rivers of the kingdom shimmered silver, carrying fragments of moonlight on their currents. Kael stood beside her, silent, his hands resting loosely at his sides. The scar over his heart, once the mark of the goddess's bond, was gone. In its place was only smooth skin, warm beneath the light of the rising sun. It's strange, Seraphine said softly, to see the world without her watching. Kael followed her gaze to the fading moon. Maybe she's still watching, just no longer judging. Seraphine smiled faintly. That's almost comforting. They stood there for a time, listening to the whisper of wind and the soft rush of the river below. The silence was not empty, it was full of things unspoken. Grief. Freedom. Hope. The people will look to you now, Kael said quietly. Not as a queen. Not as a vessel. But as something new. I don't want worship, she replied. Only remembrance, of what we were and what we chose to become. Kael looked at her then, truly looked. The woman who had once been bound by divine fate now stood unbound, and yet her eyes still held that same impossible light. The fire of choice. The moon is waning, he murmured. Seraphine turned to face him fully. And what will you do now, Wolf King without a curse? He gave a small rueful smile. Maybe I'll learn how to live without one. Her lips curved. And if I asked you to stay? Kael stepped closer. Then I'd stay until the stars forgot their names. For a heartbeat, the wind stilled. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then their hands met, warm, human, alive. No chains. No prophecies. Only the steady rhythm of two hearts that had survived gods, curses, and time itself. Above them, the last shadow of the moon slid across the sun, the final eclipse. Not an omen, not a curse, but a promise, that endings could be reborn as beginnings. Seraphine lifted her gaze to the sky. Once the goddess bound love in chains. We broke them. But maybe, love was never meant to be worshipped. Kael's voice was quiet, reverent. Only lived. They stood together as light spilled over the horizon, washing the land in gold. The rivers blazed like veins of fire. The last traces of divine ash scattered into the wind. The age of gods was over. The age of hearts had begun. And as the first dawn of the new world broke over Lunaris, two figures stood at its threshold, no longer queen and cursed king, but simply Seraphine and Kael. A woman and a man bound not by destiny but by choice. By love, unchained, unending.